Look, it's wonderful to be out in person and wonderful to be here with my colleagues and friends. First of all, the Honourable Mary Ng, who'll get a proper introduction shortly. But this is her first trip, as she'll tell you. So we're delighted that she chose Newfoundland and Labrador to come to her first in-person trip. And I'm also here with my colleague and friend, the Honourable Seamus O'Regan, your MP, my golly. Your MP for St. John South Mount Pearl. And I've been privileged to know Seamus for a long time, and part of our team that represents you all in Ottawa. And I'm going to tell you what I love about Seamus the most is his stick-to-itiveness and his mantra of we don't rant and roar, we just get it done. And I think last week's announcement for our province proved that we just get it done. Delighted to have the Prime Minister in town to make some phenomenal announcements to give Newfoundlanders and Labradorians some assurances going forward that their power rates will not be going up, and of course the great news on daycare and some other things for our province. So without further ado, friends, I'd like to turn it over to my colleague and friend, Minister Seamus O'Regan.
Long. I couldn't think of anybody better, actually, to start this off, the first person to take the mic when we're talking about women in entrepreneurship than Gudie Hutchings. Because you've been entrepreneuring for as long as I've known you, and that's about, well, I'm not going to say, a long time. And Gudie's been extremely successful in her own right in the business world, and to have her voice and her conscience and her sage advice on a national level, I think is good not just for the province, actually, it's good for the country. Mary Ng, I don't know what to say, another really great friend of mine. So I've got two great friends up here. I've known Mary for a long time, and we worked together at Ryerson University. She's a force. I think even Gudie would have to acknowledge that, being a force in and of herself. And what I love about Mary is that she sees the potential in everybody that she meets. And I think it's a perfect marriage that she is our minister, not only for small business, but for international trade as well. And while those sometimes can be very different files, one actually speaks to the ambition of the other. And whenever Mary meets a small business person, she thinks of their potential and why aren't they selling to the world, not just down the street, but to the world. Mary sees the potential in people, and I'm proud to say I think Mary back in the day saw the potential in me, maybe even in a time that I didn't. I am grateful for her company and for her advice and for her friendship. I'm so proud to serve with both of them. I should add too, as Gudie said, this is Mary's first time in Newfoundland, so when we were coming up with Mary's itinerary, her staff were wondering if maybe she could do it on the first Wednesday in August, and I said, no, that would be a statutory holiday, so no, she can't do it then, it's Regatta Day. Well, then fine, we'll do it the day after. Well, see, the problem with our statutory holiday is that if the regatta doesn't go ahead on the Wednesday, then Thursday may be the holiday. Okay, then how about the Friday? Well, see, the problem is if the Wednesday's no good and the Thursday's no good, and then it might have to be on the Friday. So that's why she's here on the Tuesday. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my great pleasure to welcome to the podium and to St. John's, Newfoundland for the first time, the Honourable Mary Ng.
Well, thank you so very much, and what a welcome that is. It is truly spectacular to be here in St. John's and to be in Newfoundland, Labrador, and to be here with my good friends, Seamus O'Regan and Gudie Hutchings, is just wonderful. It is my first time here in Newfoundland, but it certainly was such a warm welcome, and my first time outside of my own province of Ontario since the beginning of this pandemic. So it is truly special to be able to spend the time, this first trip outside of my own province, and to be here in Newfoundland and to be able to make the announcement today is extraordinary. What a wonderful introduction from both Seamus and Gudie. And as colleagues, we work around our caucus table and our cabinet table, and you couldn't have stronger advocates for the people of Newfoundland, Labrador, for their communities, and as the small business minister and the international trade minister, it's a regular dialogue that we always have about the potential of the people of this wonderful province, and what we stand to do together, and what we've been doing throughout this pandemic. I can't think of better advocates than Gudie and Seamus, and of course our other colleagues who also represent Newfoundland, Labrador. And right from the beginning of the pandemic, our commitment was absolutely clear. It was, we were going to support Canadians and support small businesses, get them through this trying time, and get on that road to economic recovery, which is just so important to all of us across the country, and certainly here in Newfoundland, Labrador. I'm also thrilled to be here today with Jennifer, who is the CEO of Enlo. And I had an opportunity, together with Gudie a little earlier, to spend some time with Enlo and hear the really great work that you are doing on behalf of the incredible women entrepreneurs and business owners here in Newfoundland, Labrador. So thank you so much, and I'm so thrilled that you could also be here with us. But before I go too further, may I just take a moment to acknowledge the land to which we gather. It's the ancestral unceded land of the Mi'kmaq and the Beothuk. And for those of us who are settlers or even immigrants to Canada, it's important to recognize that Indigenous peoples have always been here and that Canadians have a role to play in reconciliation. This work is especially important with the tragic and horrifying confirmation of hundreds of children's lives who were taken at residential schools. And it's important that we recognize the terrible legacy of residential schools and the role that we can all play as Canadians in our ongoing reconciliation efforts moving on. Let me begin by saying that, that proudly we are a feminist government and that we have been focused on supporting women from the day we were elected in 2015. It has been a top priority for me as a member of Parliament for Markham Thornhill, and as a minister to ensure that we're making real progress for women. By advancing gender equality and supporting women-led businesses, we know we can add up to $150 billion to Canada's economy. I often say this as well as the international trade minister. And if the world follows suit, we can add $12 trillion to the global economy. Our government has taken significant steps to reduce barriers and to ensure that women have the support that they need to succeed. From using gender-based analysis to inform our policies in budget making and our policies in government since 2017, to legislating pay equity, to investing almost $1.2 billion to support childcare in 2021, and now investing $30 billion through Budget 2021 to make Canada-wide early learning and childcare a reality. You heard that from the Prime Minister last week. And here he announced that there will be $10 a day childcare. It's going to be a reality here in Newfoundland and Labrador by 2023. And we've boosted the Canada Child Benefit, lifting hundreds of thousands of families out of poverty. These are good social policies, but they're more than that. These are important economic policies, and it represents the investments in our long-term growth and prosperity for our country and here in Newfoundland, Labrador. It has been an incredibly difficult year and a half for women entrepreneurs who have been disproportionately impacted by this pandemic. But we know that women-owned businesses and women entrepreneurs have faced systemic barriers to success since well before this pandemic. After listening to the experiences of women in business, our government was determined to support them to succeed, including addressing systemic barriers to things like access to mentorship, to resources, and crucially, access to capital. The Prime Minister gave me a mandate to double the women and female entrepreneurs in our country. Right now, 99% of all Canadian businesses are small and medium-sized enterprises, but only 16% of that are women-owned, and only 11% of those are exporting. We can do better, and we are doing better. This has also led our government to launching the first ever for Canada, a Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy in 2018, which I proudly get to lead. It's a $6 billion investment. And we're going to continue this work by investing in almost additional $150 million in budget 2021. Remember that number I told you earlier, by adding $150 billion to the Canadian economy? Well, $6 billion is our strategy, and that is a terrific return on that investment. And a crucial pillar of this Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy includes the Knowledge Hub. It includes an extensive network of researchers, business support organizations, and stakeholders working across the country to grow women-owned businesses and entrepreneurs across the country. The work that they do helps our government with the evidence-based decision-making that we do by making sure that our policies address the systemic barriers that women are facing in business and to launch programs that will help women succeed. Today, I'm thrilled that we are going to invest $5 million to support the Women's Entrepreneurship Hub over the next 3 years, starting with $800,000 this year. This funding will support the Knowledge Hub's momentum, expanding their research and their tools to support diverse women entrepreneurs. I'm also pleased to share that the Knowledge Hub most recent findings with the release of their report called the State of Women's Entrepreneurship in Canada 2021. The report sheds much needed light on the structural barriers faced by women entrepreneurs, how this pandemic has impacted them, and it shows how they have been so resilient. They've adapted and they've innovated. So I want to thank the Knowledge Hub for this report and to let you know that we're going to review it closely, and it's going to help us accelerate the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy. And since the launch of this strategy in 2018, we have seen countless success stories of women-owned businesses starting up, scaling up, and accessing new markets by growing into those international markets. And there's some great stories. I always think that stories is the way for us to share what these terrific women entrepreneurs have done. And right here in Newfoundland, Labrador, let me give you a couple of examples. There is Succeed. It's a social enterprise that creates hydroponic grow kits to improving food security and to encourage sustainable living. Another, Oceans Interactive. This is a multi-platform video game developer right here. And then there's Port Rexton Brewing Company. A successful, there we go, there's already applause, a successful and growing craft brewery. Each of these businesses is owned and operated by women. They all have benefited from the Women's Entrepreneurship Strategy, and we know that there is still more work to do to level this playing field for women entrepreneurs, and good information leads to good policy. Or as the report says, what gets measured gets done. And I believe what we have just announced today continues to do just that. I want to close by saying that our government knows how challenging this pandemic has been for small and medium-sized businesses, and particularly for women-owned businesses. We have been there every step of the way, and we look forward to working with you side by side on this economic recovery. We're committed to not losing the progress that we have gained for women-led businesses here in Newfoundland, Labrador. It has been and will continue to be a top priority for me as a member of Parliament, and certainly as a minister responsible for small business and for international trade, because we want to make sure that the progress that we have made for women and that the change that they are taking up stays. So thank you so very much for having me, and what a great day for women entrepreneurs in the country and here in Newfoundland, Labrador.
Thank you, Minister. That is exciting. And as Parliamentary Secretary for Women and Gender Equality and Rural Economic Development, that means so much to our province and all of Atlantic Canada and all Canadians. And to tell us a little bit more of that, I want to introduce Jennifer Bessell. So Jennifer, as you know, is the Chief Executive Officer of the Newfoundland and Labrador Women's Entrepreneur, or NLO as we refer to it. And Jennifer is a tour de force in her own right. You know, with her background in the not-for-profits, her passion for our province, and in the chat and the discussions that we had with the minister and Jennifer and her team this morning, it's quite clear that when this pandemic hit last year, and of course we all know there was no playbook written for this, Jennifer and her team got out of the blocks right away. They were reaching out to their members. It's interesting how they've increased their membership. They were on the ground working with women entrepreneurs, helping them scale up, helping them address the challenges that were before them, and there are many, many good news stories. But for the great work that you're doing, Jennifer, we know that there's much, much more you're going to do. So folks, without further ado, please give a warm welcome to Jennifer.
That's the problem with masks and earrings. You're never quite sure how it's going to come to be. There we go. Yeah, I don't want to have an accident here. There we go. Excellent. Thank you so much for that warm introduction. On behalf of the Newfoundland and Labrador Organization of Women Entrepreneurs, NLO, I am pleased to be here today to acknowledge and congratulate the Women's Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub on their report, The State of Women's Entrepreneurship in Canada. For 24 years, NLO has assisted women entrepreneurs in Newfoundland and Labrador to start, grow, and advance in business. We see and experience the challenges and barriers faced by women entrepreneurs every day as we assist them in navigating a challenging business environment. Reports, such as this one provided by WEC, provide two clear advantages for the work that we do. First, it informs on national trends whereby we can cross-reference our provincial and regional experience. And second, it clearly illustrates the systemic challenges that exist for women in entrepreneurship. And it underscores that no singular organization, strategy, or approach can overcome those barriers. We need to work together to create a stronger, more vibrant women's entrepreneurship ecosystem. There is a role for government at the federal, provincial, and municipal levels. There's a role for academic institutions and research, such as this report provided by WEC. There's a role for support organizations like the Women's Enterprise Organizations of Canada, or WEOC, a national body providing support to organizations like NLO through training and resources for business advisors and member organizations. And there is the frontline business advising and programs tailored specifically to women entrepreneurs by organizations like NLO, organizations who take that business journey along with the women entrepreneurs that we serve. Together, we all provide a continuum of service delivery that, when nurtured and supported, create the optimum environment for women to be successful in business. Women have been greatly disadvantaged by COVID, and many of the strides made by women in entrepreneurship and in business in general have been negatively impacted. Recovery will mean a laser focus on regaining ground that has been lost, while also creating an environment for further growth. Resources like this report being announced today, as well as a national survey of entrepreneurs conducted by the Women's Enterprise Organizations of Canada, and local studies such as NLO's own Economic Action Plan, Unleashing the Economic Power of Women, all serve to inform activities and shape policy as we work together to strengthen women's participation in entrepreneurship in Canada and in Newfoundland and Labrador. NLO's membership is currently nearing 500 and climbing. Each year, we conduct in excess of 3,000 client advisory meetings, serving in excess of 1,200 individual women entrepreneurs with one-to-one intensive business supports. This is in addition to the online training programs, networking activities, and informational seminars we conduct. These numbers illustrate clearly the need that exists in Newfoundland and Labrador and the further potential that exists. We need to be continued support and activity for all the players in the entrepreneurial ecosystem in order to continue to realize those successes. So thank you.
Thank you for those wonderful remarks, Jennifer, and we look forward to watching the progress with you and your team as you build and grow. Look, folks, I just want to reiterate what a great day for ministering for women, not only in Newfoundland and Labrador and entrepreneurs all across the country. And I know everybody will agree with us when we say we cannot let the pandemic roll back all the wonderful work that was done on the progress of women's participation in the workforce. But, you know, through the pandemic, we did see some of our country's critical gaps, and that really disproportionately affected women. For instance, over the course of COVID-19, more than 100,000 Canadian women left the workforce. And understanding how critical it is to bring back women into the economy, our most recent budget has set aside over $30 billion over the next 5 years to establish the $10 per day national early learning and childcare system, which we announced again for Newfoundland and Labrador last week. We know that's going to make a real difference for women, for parents, and for families all across the country and here at home in Newfoundland and Labrador who need to get back to work full score. It's the most significant, critical investment we can make for economic growth moving forward, and especially for women. But to us, supporting the success of women in the workforce, it goes further than just direct business investments and emergency supports. It also means legislating pay equity, having a strategy to address gender-based violence, and making inclusive investments to ensure women-owned businesses grow in Canada, grow around the world, and especially grow here at home in Newfoundland and Labrador. We know that these kinds of sensible economic policies are critical to our recovery from COVID-19, as will the incredible women entrepreneurs that we're supporting with this announcement today. So thanks again to Minister Ng and Minister O'Regan and Jennifer for being with us today. It's upward and onward for women in Newfoundland and Labrador and all across the country. Thank you so much. I now turn it over to the Minister's media people to take questions. Over to you, Blue.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Gudie. That concludes the announcement portion. We will now begin our media availability. So I would like to invite Minister Ng up to the mic, and we will begin taking questions in just a moment. For all of our colleagues from media who are joining us today online, please raise your hand if you have a question for Minister Ng. I will unmute you, and then I will invite you to introduce yourself and your outlet and ask your question. So one more time, for any of the outlets joining us online at the moment, please use the raise hand function to ask your question. And give it 30 seconds because I see no raised hands at the moment. You're also welcome to message me in the chat if you have a question. I will do another call to the outlets joining us online. I see a few of you online here. If any of you have questions, feel free to type in the chat or use the raise hand function and I will unmute you. All right, well, it looks like we have no questions from our colleagues from the media. I will do one last call just in case we're experiencing some technical difficulties. So one more time, please use the raise hand function or type in the chat if you have a question. I see quite a few of you online here. All right, with that, thank you so much to everyone who has joined us today. Feel free to follow up by email if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Terrific.
All right.